Welcome back. So Home Affairs is calling on South Africans to make inputs by the end of February on the draft identity management policy. The policy proposal is aimed at strengthening the department's core duties, which include managing the birth, marriage and death records, as well as eradicating identity theft. Currently, the system is fraught with fraud and corruption, making it possible for anyone to get access to and be in possession of South Africa's official documents through, unfortunately, fraudulent means. Now, to explain the process further, we are joined by Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. So nice to have you, Minister. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Leanne, and good morning to the viewers and the listeners out there.
So this bill deals with many different aspects of the department's functions. Perhaps you can take us through some of those and tell us what you're actually hoping to achieve through this overhaul.
Thanks, Leanne. Maybe the easiest way to approach it, the official identity management policy, the new official identity management policy, maybe to understand it, is to look at what are we trying to correct. You know, in legal jargon, they say, what mischief are you trying to cure? In other words, what is the problem statement? What is that which you are trying to correct? And there are two main areas here, Leanne, that needs a sort of a correction. Firstly, there are three databases in Home Affairs. The first one is what we call the National Population Register, or NPR, which keeps population records of citizens of South Africa and permanent residents. Your record of birth, marriage, death, identification as in the ID, your ID, and passport information. They are all housed in the NPR. The second database is what we call National Immigration Identification System, or NIIS. This one stores information, records about asylum seekers and refugees. However, it does not even store their birth, their marriage, or their death records. The third database is Visa Adjudication System, which keeps record of holders of temporary visas and also permits. These three systems are separate. They don't speak to each other. That is the first problem. The second problem is that while South Africa has made very huge strides in identification of citizens, there are still people who are, in one or the other, are either undocumented or very improperly undocumented. For instance, the non-binary, transgender, and intersex persons are not documented in the way they should. There are people who never acquired birth certificates at birth until later in life, and it's very difficult for them to acquire those. There are children who have been abandoned early in life. There are people who are excluded, for instance, on historical grounds, like the Crescent community. And there are diseased persons whose record of death was never entered. So that is the second set of problems. So we are then making proposals on major policy focus areas. The first one is that the databases need to be one. They need to be integrated, not only integrated with Home Affairs system, but with all other systems, like in the police, in social development, in the banks, and many other institutions who survive on correct identification of people. We're also going to need to amend the Identification Act number 68 of 1997 and the Alteration of Sex Description and Sex Status Act 49 of 2003, in line with the Constitution and what we mean, the principles of human dignity, non-discrimination, and equality, which at the moment do not apply very well. And then the other policy focus area, which is extremely important, Leanne, is that at the present moment, to identify you, when you take an ID or whatever form of identification, we take your photo and your fingerprint. That is the only biometric we have about you. And we think we need to get more advanced as systems become more sophisticated and as theft and corruption also increased. We then want to move on. The system that stores your fingerprint and ID, and photo, is called HANIS, Home Affairs National Information System. We are trying to move to a new system called ABIS, or Automatic biometric information system,
Yeah.
which can store 5 of our biometrics, not only fingerprint and photo, but fingerprint, photo, palm print, iris recognition, facial recognition, and your photo, meaning it can recognize you through your iris, that this is actually Leanne,
Yeah,
or it
yeah.
can recognize you through your face. So
Yeah.
that's what some of the things that we're trying to do.
Which, I mean, is
So-
moving, it's moving in line, and especially when you talk about biometrics, because that, seeing as we're there, let's perhaps talk about the biometrics for a little bit. So that is, I mean, that is something that is it's a global trend. I mean, when you travel sometimes around Europe, I mean, you literally have to stand in front of a camera or whatever it may be. It scans your face, it opens, and you're allowed to go into the country. And that's the way things are operating and moving forward. So, there's obviously the talk, however, of a breach in security, and people are very, very worried that if we do go this route, it needs to be in the safest possible way, and that our digital identity needs to be secure, because this is something that we worry about, and already South Africa has huge problems of compromised security. Is this not even more of a worry, that it's a great way to go, but the fact that we don't have enough security with the way things operate now, how are we going to ensure that everybody's digital identity, from fingers to faces to eyes to feet to, as you say, everything is going to be captured? How are we going to protect South Africans?
Well, I thought this was a way to protect them. I'm surprised if anybody will be worried that their identity can be stolen. Nobody can steal your iris, Leanne. Nobody can steal your face, but they can steal your photo. Nobody can steal your fingerprints anymore because this automated biometric information system will make sure that does not happen. So I don't think there's any worry in that. In fact, it is strengthening security, because at the moment, you are aware that many IDs have been duplicated, because all they need to do is to swap the photo and play around and all that. So in this new system, there is no possibility of playing around like that, because we are putting in many things at the same time, which will not be easy to steal. And I'm repeating, how will any person steal your iris? Because it's yours and it belongs to you only, and it's in your eye.
I suppose we'd be amazed the way that people are able to do things. But there's also talk of eventually moving towards taking people's DNA. Perhaps you can talk to us about that, because that is included, looking into the future. And then the other question would be, how often would we need to update this? Because if you start capturing it from the first day that a baby is born, obviously we need to update quite regularly. What would be the process for that?
Yes, Leanne, I think it's good that you raised this issue, because it's the one that makes people jittery about the security of their systems. If you look at the key proposals which we put to the public, we clearly said collection of DNA as part of the elements of the official identity has been raised during consultations. We are just saying that, but we go on to say, however, given the sensitivity and the complexity of this matter, there is further research is underway. You need further research, and this can only be discussed in the future. So we are just flaking it really. It's not really part of what we are putting in front of the public. It's just, we're just flaking it that in future, because this ABIS can also, if you wish to, it can also store your DNA. It can also store a footprint of a newborn child. But we are just saying that is just being discussed for the future. What we are putting in front of people now as proposals is that, number one, we've got one register for everybody who is in South Africa, who is within the geographic area of South Africa, whether they are a citizen, a refugee, an asylum seeker. But that doesn't mean it automatically gives citizenship. It simply means we are in one database, because we are occupying the same geographic space. That's what we are proposing. The second major proposal is about what is on your ID. Leanne, your ID has got 13 digits, and those digits have got a meaning. They are not just silence, they've got a very serious meaning. The first 6 digits is your date of birth, starting with the day, then the month, then the year. The 7th digit is your gender. And unfortunately, our gender is just binary, male or female. And you are aware the world does not consist of that. So the proposal here is that on the 6th, your 7th digit, sorry, at the present moment, what is the 7th digit which shows your gender? If it is 0 to 4, it means you are female. If it is 5 to 9, it means you are male. Now, that's all we have. But what about the other people who fall in between? It's a problem. Fortunately, there's been an international conference in Geneva where this issue was resolved. That for people who are not sure, who are still going sex change operations, hormonal treatment, and psychological counseling, we put an X on the digit number 7. And then we continue with all the others as they are. So that's the proposal we're making. Okay. And the third proposal, of course, is about these honeys. And the fourth one, very important, Leanne, is that many people believe, as I used to before going to Home Affairs, that nobody gets buried without their death certificate. But unfortunately, the reality is that there are people in other parts of the country who bury people without death certificates. We want to make that illegal. In other words, we want to make it criminal offense to bury anybody without their death certificate. Just to show you how important this is, in the eastern part of this country, especially between Eswatini and Mpumalanga, we've realized that many babies there, when they die, no death certificate is taken of them. Rather, after burial, their birth certificate are sold to a foreign national who then assumes their identity because they've died. So we want to make it clear that when we die, the record must be there, it must be identified. So these are proposals we are putting in front of the people to comment on.
Yeah, and I must say, I mean, I think that South Africa should be commended for actually moving in such a progressive way, particularly when it comes to the identification of sex. I mean, that is something that is I think, a big accolade to South Africa. However, Minister, when are we proposing? Obviously, this is open for discussion until the end of February, where people are meant to get things going. But how would it work if it comes into play? Do all of us need to begin again, sort of going in and re-registering, going for our biometrics and all of that? Is it going to be a complete overhaul? Obviously, we can understand from babies, this is happening every single day, but we do have a problem where at least 1 in 10 babies are not even registered, and that is what you're trying to get over here. But the reality is to then take the entire nation and re-identify us, not re-identify us, but sort out our identities by going biometric and everything else. This is a big process that's going to be undertaken, I imagine.
Well, it sounds very big, but it's not really like that, Leanne. For instance, we've already got your biometrics. We've already got your fingerprint and your photo in Honey system. So all we need to do is to find a service provider who will translate all this information and transfer it into the new system, so that you find yourself in the new system. And later, when you come to do anything in Home Affairs, we can pick up all the others. I don't think we'll call all the population and say, come and line up. The issue of changing the ID is not going to affect you. It's only going to affect those who need an X. Those who are still binary, who will need 0 to 4, 5 to 9, they'll still be there, except that from then henceforth, the 7th digit will no longer be the way it is. So it will be something that is gradual, rather than calling people in. On the issue of newborns, even now, Leanne, we encourage, and it's in the Act, that children must be registered. They must take birth certificate 30 days after birth. When you do it later than 30 days, it's called late registration of birth, and it's a new process. But to facilitate this, we are working with the Department of Health to make sure that Home Affairs have got offices in all the hospitals. Unfortunately, up to now, we only have offices in 156 hospitals. Most of our offices, we actually put them next to labor ward, so that when the child gets out of the labor ward, before they go home, they are registered and get their birth certificate. That's what we are encouraging. so as not for people to rush to Home Affairs and clog our offices as they've been doing.
Yeah, there's a question that's come through from Armed Dragon, and sorry, Minister, it is the end of the interview, so very quickly. Will we still be defined by race? Why don't we have a nationality of just South African? Is that going to still happen?
We're not defining anybody by race even now, Leah.
Okay, so this person's got it all wrong then. That's not even a relevant question at this time.
On you remember on your ID, it used to be written ethnic group and all that. That's no longer there.
Yeah.
All that is there is whether you are a citizen or a non-citizen.
Well, there you have it. So that's just to silence these people asking questions like this. Minister, people have got until the end of February. How do we get hold of this? How do we comment on it? Because this is what this is all about, getting people to comment.
Well, the normal comment, I'll get my spokesperson to give you the details of where they must send it. On our website, there's an indication there on how you must present. I mean, I'm sure people have been responding to inputs from Home Affairs for quite a long time. We just use a similar process here.
All right, so
right to Home Affairs, and I'm sure our spokesperson will give the details of which addresses must be used.
I imagine onto the website, the Home Affairs website there, you will find the draft document, which is available for comments up until the end of February. Have a read, have a look at it. Very, very interesting. But as we say, it's up to South Africans to comment to see if it goes ahead in its current form or there are some changes that happen to it. Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for talking to us here on Morning Live. So it's that.